Okay, so today I'll be talking about aviation, access, and resilience. So rethinking growth for the connectivity, as well as looking at aviation in the next 10 years. So what does that mean for all of us in this room? Because we've got different stakeholders, and how do we collaborate and use data to our advantage, especially in this digital era, on where data is very important to make better decisions. So we'll explore growth in aviation's most dynamic sector. So again, the contents, so 6 different parts. So we look at the state of Asia-Pacific aviation, connectivity constraints, sub-region dynamics, because Asia-Pacific has multiple sub-regions within it, and each region has different dynamics within it. The infrastructure bet, so again, that's a very important aspect of our industry. It's about infrastructure. How do we build the capacity to take on that growth that we are aiming to achieve over the next decade and beyond? Sustainability and resilience, so again, that's a buzzword. We hear that all the time today. And we look at collaboration as a strategy. So I think that's very important for everyone in this room to acknowledge that collaboration is very important through partnership and how we work together for a common goal. Again, Asia-Pacific, it's the world's aviation engine. It's a big region. It takes about just a bit under 38% of the global air capacity, so that's quite significant, especially when you look at all the breakdowns of South Asia all the way to Northeast Asia, Australasia, and so forth. So I think it's quite a big chunk of the traffic that moves around this part of the world. 4.5 billion seats scheduled in 2025, and we usually grow at about 3 to 5%, but that's going to be a bit distorted this year because of events taking place in Middle East, and how that capacity returns will dictate where we end at the end of the year. Annualized growth, 5.2%, so that's twice as much as the global average. So I think we should be proud of the fact that Asia-Pacific is the growth engine in this part of the world. So that's very encouraging and positive, especially when you've got half of the world's population of 4.8 billion people residing. So that creates a lot of opportunity and for us to do more business together. So again, recovery landscape. So the region is still catching up from post-COVID recovery. So you can see on the screen, Central Asia, that's gone above, I think it's about 168% from 2019 reference level. South Asia is also growing at a rapid pace beyond its 2019 level again. So where there's patches of below capacity, it's Southeast Asia, and that's driven partially because of some airlines having financial difficulties getting those aircraft and capacity back into the air. And also Northeast Asia. So I think there's a lot of geopolitics. We'll talk more about that as we move forward in our presentation. So geopolitics has played an important role, and it's not just the Asian carriers, but airlines that are coming from Europe. There's some constraints in airspace, and how do we overcome that? So we'll talk more about that. 3 forces that's constraining growth. So first part is the supply chain pressure. And I think this is not new. We've been hearing a lot about that since post-COVID. It's just that airlines are not able to get enough of the aircraft or spare parts to keep that growth going as it has been materializing. Geopolitical headwinds. Again, we got China, USA, you've got Middle East at the moment. So what role does that play, and how do we pivot away from that in terms of capacity deployment and looking at different city pairs and so forth? And you've got the profitability paradox. So again, Asia-Pacific net margins are 2.3% as compared to global 3.9%. So it's all about the split between international and domestic. So domestic, there's not much money to be made, but a lot of the profits are made from long-haul flying. Okay, so if you look at Asia-Pacific as a region, about 80% of the capacity is allocated to domestic. And we've got a large domestic base out of India, China, Malaysia, Australia, Japan, Korea, and so forth. So you can see there's a big, large pool of domestic capacity within that. And you've got low-cost carriers that have come into this play as well. So low-cost carriers are basically running on low fares. If the price of the fuel increases, that puts a lot of pressure on them to maintain that low fares. So that creates a lot of headwind for them in terms of their profitability and able to deliver a good return on assets. 4 regions, 4 different stories. So again, Northeast Asia, it's still recovering, and that's partially because of the capacity shifts and the role that China is playing with its international outbound recovery. So domestic is strong. The outbound international is a bit weaker than expected, despite all the different visa requirements that Southeast Asia nations have offered. It still hasn't been able to stimulate that demand evenly. South Asia, so that's the Indian subcontinent, that's recovered very strongly. And if you look at the international capacity breakdown, that's been quite strong as well. And that's purely because of the types of travelers that are coming in and out. So Indian diaspora is a very big segment for the Indian traffic, for the Indian carriers. So I think that's staying pretty strong. Then you've got Southeast Asia, which is below its potential. So there's a lot of potential that's built into the region. But because of low-cost carriers and some of the financial distress that they have, that's put a bit of pressure on getting that capacity back into the system. So again, if you look at Indonesia, it's still minus 20% over 2019. But Vietnam and Philippines is much ahead. But with the fuel shortages and what we may expect in the coming months, we may see some decline in capacity because airlines are not able to actually get enough fuel supplies for the aircraft to keep running. So that's going to be a key focus in the months to come. So it's something we need to keep an eye out on. Central Asia is a very important market. It's small, but it's seen significant growth because of the Russian transit traffic, because the Russians are not allowed to travel directly from Russia to Europe. So what they're doing, they're going through Central Asia to connect into other parts of the world. So that's probably the reason why Central Asia has been booming, and it's a market that's growing substantially, and a focus that we, as in Pacific Asia travel, we need to focus on to see how we can capture some of that attractiveness of that particular region. Building the foundation for the next decade. So again, infrastructure plays an important role in terms of how we build that capacity and how we serve that in the years to come. So if you look at airports like Hong Kong, they're moving towards 120 million passengers per annum through their infrastructure rebuilding, through third runway, new terminal, getting new airline capacities into the system. Changi Airport's looking at about 140 million by mid-2030. So the fifth terminal is under construction. So it's not a runway issue, they've got the runway, but it's building that infrastructure, the physical terminal, to get those passengers coming into the hub of Singapore. Seoul Incheon, they've got 4 runways completed, 5th is being planned, and they're looking at about 106 million per annum. So if you look at the trajectory, most of the airports are at about anywhere from 65 to 80 million today, but they're all moving towards about 120 to 150 million in the next decade to come. So there's significant capacity. Airlines will be ordering aircraft, and that aircraft needs to be serviced with passengers, and the types of fleet that will be composed of will be narrow body, and a lot of low-cost airlines will be coming into those to fill those seat gaps. So I think there's going to be tremendous potential to tap new city pairs. So it gets exciting for tourism operators to look at new markets, new destinations, and the types of travelers that they will service as we move forward. And of course, you've got China, India, that's building lots of airports, so they're going to cater to a lot of traffic and people movement. As I said earlier, fleet growth, 5,800 aircraft on order. That's twice any other region in the world. And if you look at the graph itself, we are looking at anywhere between 120 to 140 million seats per annum that's going to be added in this region in the following years. So that's starting from 2026 all the way to 2030. So that's quite a significant amount of seats that will be added into the system, and we've got to cater to that system. Korea, so if you look at host market spotlight, so Incheon Airport is very interesting. It's a #1 transit hub between North America and Southeast Asia. It carries 60% more connecting traffic than Tokyo Narita, and Tokyo Narita previously was one of the most connected airports between Asia and North America. So it's good to see Korea taking the chance and increasing that over a period. They'll get 106 million passengers. SkyTeam Alliance, with the merger of Asiana and Korean, that will give them a 47% footprint in Incheon. And we've got one of the largest domestic routes in the world, which is Seoul, Jeju, and you got Seoul, Tokyo as a city pair, as the largest international city pair in the world. So that includes Haneda and Narita. So a lot of Koreans like to go to Japan. So that's positive. And you've got the China connectivity gap. So there's a lot of opportunities between Korea and China. And you've got a fleet pipeline of about 199 aircraft, with Korean Air taking a mix of wide-body aircrafts to cater to some of that long-haul flying. And of course, you've got the potential of tourism and transit. So this is an important point, where by 2045, we see Korea as the third largest market in the world. So there's significant potential in Korea to actually gain connectivity and tourism business as we move forward. Growth is not enough. It must be resilient. So it's all about margin over volume. So as I said earlier, domestic flying does not bring profitability. It's about being smarter in terms of how we drive the sustainability of this business. In aviation, profit margins are very thin. So we've got to be very smart about how we operate and sustain growth in order to have a sustainable business. Airport intelligence, so that's again using biometrics. And if you look at airports, certain airports do a very good job. If you look at Hong Kong, Singapore, it's a breeze. You can go through all the biometrics. You don't need to carry your passport through the whole process. You can be passportless and keep the passport in your bag. You don't need to bring it out. It's all through your facial recognition. So this is something that other airports can catch up on as we move forward in the decade to come. LCC maturation, so a lot of the LCCs have come into the market. If you were to go back to 2023, a lot of people said low-cost airlines will not exist in Asia Pacific for a lot of reasons. It doesn't have a single unified market like United States or Europe, and therefore it will fail. But today, low-cost carriers in this region is flourishing. Every airline that's got a full-service subsidiary has a low-cost airlines built into it. So again, it's a must, and you've got different generation of travelers that require different types of product and services to actually cater to their needs. Demand diversification, so we've seen that over-relying on one single market can be detrimental if that market does not come back. So again, demand diversification is something we've got to look at a bit more closely and have a strategy around that. And of course, you've got long-haul rebalancing on different fleet, and what we can expect is the ultra-long haul. And we'll see Australia to London Heathrow, Sydney to London in 22 hours when Qantas launches the largest, longest route in the world. So that's going to be a groundbreaker and hub buster for an aircraft that can fly 22 hours non-stop. So that's never heard of, and this is something that's going to come into line next year. Again, tourism ecosystem is not built, they're discovered. So again, this is all about collaboration. So you've got airlines, airports, and tourism boards, destinations. So we need to work together to ensure that we have a synergetic relationship, and one cannot exist without the other. So again, there's route strategy, network design. We look at capacity, incentive. So if an airline comes into your airport at the destination, how do tourism boards engage with the airports to give an incentive to that airline to maintain a service that may not have existed? So I think it needs a review and a strategy on how we grow a specific destination. So today we look at Gwangju. Okay, there's no direct flights, but you can come through Busan. But you need to look at the connectivity, getting airlines to come in here directly. So if you were to look at your travel patterns getting here, it probably required a stop in Seoul, getting a train, coming here. It's inconvenient. But low-cost carriers can actually enable that to happen. Again, partnership with Patel between OAG has been crucial. So data intelligence as a connective tissue. So that binds it all together. Okay, so data is central to what we do, and there's advocacy to access. So once you get the data, you can actually work out what sort of advocacy that you need to build upon, and using that resilience through diversification strategy. So again, data is gold, and it's how you use the data to actually expand your business opportunities. So what is the data telling us about the next decade ahead? So by 2027, China international capacity will return to 2019 levels. So that's positive because China outbound provides opportunity. By 2028, supply chain constraints will ease, and that could be pushed out a little bit further if there's any other hiccups in the ecosystem. By 2030, India will surpass China as the largest domestic market. So there's a lot of aircraft on order. Indigo has about 905 aircraft on order. There's 50 new airports in India, and that's going to create a lot of opportunities. By 2035, Central Asia emerges as a significant transit corridor. So I talked more about that previously, about Central Asia, and there's a lot of investments that's going into that particular part of the world and the region, and we will see a lot of growth moving forward in this particular sub-region. And by 2045, Seoul Incheon could be the world's third largest aviation market. So 5 imperatives for tourism leaders. Use data to lead, not follow. Diversify your resource markets. Advocate for policy access, so that includes bilaterals, air service development, using the data and having a collaboration strategy. And again, collaborating through different airports, airlines, tourism board across the entire ecosystem. And invest in quality, not just in quantity. Okay, so I think this is all about how we view tourism. It's not about the number of visitors that comes in, but it's about the quality of those travelers that are coming into your society or destination. Again, the next decade is going to be the most exciting ever in Asia-Pacific region. So if there's any students in the room and they've got any doubts about travel, I think this statement should resonate with you, that it's probably the most exciting phase that we're going to experience in the next decade and so. So I think we believed in our region, in our industry, and I highly recommend travel and tourism as an impetus to growth, and I strongly believe in this sector at large. So again, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.